What's going on, everybody? It is your boy Zamboni. I'm a musician and astrologer, and it is time to talk about the astrology of the week ahead. As always, I thank you so very much for being here. Thank you for rocking with me day after day, week after week. I super appreciate all y'all, especially the regular listeners. Super appreciate you. Don't forget that I've got an astrology course coming up. If you want to learn astrology with me, then you can go to zambonifunk.com. It's right there on the front page. It's also on the book page of my where you can get appointments and astrology readings and stuff like this. I will be teaching the foundations of astrology, how to go from just liking astrology all the way to being able to perform a reading and say something meaningful in like 10 minutes or less. And so I will be teaching that. That begins on June 19th. Looking forward to having a good time there. Same place, zambonifunk.com. You can get an astrology reading. If you don't want to go through all that and you just want me to read it for you, I'm happy to do that. There's music there. There's a podcast there. There's a whole bunch of fun stuff there. So thank you for checking that out. Thanks for sending me a tip via Venmo, Cash App, PayPal. Super appreciate everybody who do that. Let's talk about the astrology of the week ahead. So this week, we have a pretty major departure going on. So right now we've got, like everybody in Taurus, right? We've got the sun there in Taurus, and Jupiter and Venus and Uranus and Mercury all in Taurus, just hanging out doing Taurus things, right? And so this week we're gonna see everybody leaving. First, the sun is going to move into Gemini, and then Venus is going to move into Gemini, and then Jupiter is going to move into Gemini as well. That one is more of a big deal than even the sun and Venus. Sun and Venus are going to move, and they do that every year. You know what I mean? They every year they go through this cycle, whereas Jupiter spends a year in one sign. And so Jupiter has been in Taurus for about a year now, and is going to move into Gemini and is going to spend about a year in Gemini. That is a pretty big deal. That's going to be a pretty major shift in the dynamic in some pretty major ways. So let's think about it. So it's important for a couple of reasons. First, because Jupiter is the greater benefic and is the one who tends to bring joy and luck and abundance and all these kinds of things, right? Tends to be something kind of meaningful or lucky around the way that Jupiter likes to operate. Now, it's important to remember that Jupiter also rules both Sagittarius and Pisces. And so we've got Saturn in Pisces right now. And so Saturn is going to respond to the difference in flavor in some kind of way. Now, Gemini tends to want to move a little more quickly, tends to want to get stuff done, and wants to chat about it and go back and forth and see tends to be like a little zippy. Now, Saturn is not playing that at all. And in fact, what we might see here with everybody moving into Gemini and maybe wanting to move a little faster is that they're under a square from Saturn in Pisces. And so that is likely to be a little bit of, they're put on the brakes a little bit with it. You know, there's a certain sense of there might be some obstacles or difficult things that might be associated with the Pisces things in some way. So like the water stuff might get a little weird and difficult or something like this, right? So the Gemini things are going to be feeling that. And then also the reason why I brought up Sagittarius a little bit here as well is because we've actually got a full moon in Sagittarius this week as well. So we're going to see all that stuff moving into Gemini, and as soon as that happens, then we're going to get the moon on the other side in Sagittarius, and we're going to see a little full moon going on there. I like this full moon pretty well. So the sun during the full moon is in Gemini, and so that's ruled by Mercury. Mercury is still in Taurus, hanging out in Taurus. The good news about Taurus is that it is not being bothered by the malefics. We've got Mars in Aries, still doing extremely strong Mars and Aries things, like wants to go super hard, wants to maybe a little too hard, right? We've got Mars conjunct the North Node right now, and so it's just like a lot of like too much Mars energy going on in this space. So it's likely to get a little bit like extra when it comes to the Mars things, but Mars is not really bothering the Mercury in Taurus. Those two don't make aspects to each other. And then even to Gemini, what we're going to see there is a sextile. That tends to be a complementary kind of aspect. So Mars actually kind of wants to help whatever's going on in Gemini. this full moon in Sagittarius is pretty far away from a square to Saturn. There is a square to Saturn here, and so we'll like see a little bit of this, Saturn square to all the Gemini things, which is going to be going on for as long as we've got stuff in Gemini, including this whole year that we've got Jupiter in Gemini. We're going to see that Saturn square. That's likely to be a major feature of Jupiter in Gemini this time around. But this full moon is like, not that close. It's like not that big a deal. So this full moon, as full moons in Sagittarius, Sagittarius tends to be like a little bit extra excited about stuff, wants to go super hard and wants to like adventure and be out in the world and all this sort of stuff. So and a full moon tends to be like a moment where the like big emotions happen and things get rowdy under a full moon, like obviously, right? Everybody knows that. And so both of those things together can get a little bit excited and wants to do all the things and might want to like push some things down and see what happens if it falls over or something like this, right? Excitement. But in general, like not really looking like too much of a problem. Looks like it might be pretty cute even. So as full moons go, and it'll obviously, of course, always the full moon is amazing to behold. And so I would strongly recommend checking that out. But so while we see that going on, then the main thing that I want to mention here is that Jupiter moving into Gemini changes a lot of things. It's going to like change the feeling of Taurus. So for the last little while, Uranus has been in Taurus with a bunch of benefics, right? We've seen Jupiter and Venus there in Taurus hanging out and both conjoining Uranus for the last 3 weeks or something like that, and Jupiter's been there in Taurus for the last year. And so there's like a sense here that Uranus has been on his best behavior a little bit, right? Like surprises and chaos and disruption, but things that like the word that I've been using all week has been serendipity. Like, oh sure, maybe it's like gonna move in a direction that you didn't think it was going to, but this is actually kind of cute because maybe it's gonna like X, or it's gonna like turn you onto something that you didn't even think was possible or something like this, right? That's cute. As we see benefics leaving this area, then Uranus is kind of just left to do whatever Uranus wants to do, right? And Uranus does like to disrupt things, really likes to turn things on their heads or bring an unexpected flair or dynamic to the situation in some kind of way. And so that looks like in the Taurus space, right? In the space where we typically would want to see things being kind of stable and all of that sort of thing, like where the benefics have been a moderating influence on how much chaos and disruption is going to actually happen. We're going to see that kind of fading into the background. And so Uranus can sort of like go back to disrupting financial systems or food systems or labor systems or all of this sort of stuff, get a little rowdy in that space. And we're just kind of back to that, right? But we're also going to see a bunch of emphasis on Gemini things. And so while we're seeing this emphasis on Gemini things, Jupiter in Gemini, especially there at the beginning of Gemini, that is actually a place where Jupiter has decanic dignity. And so even though Jupiter is said to be in detriment in Gemini, Jupiter rules Sagittarius, which is opposite to Gemini. And so Gemini is as far from home as possible when it comes to Jupiter. And so that's a position where Jupiter might be a little bit sort of like, where Jupiter wants to see wisdom and like see the forest and maybe not each individual tree. Gemini wants to dissect things and like get really into the details of things all the time and see what's really happening, and sort of like create a narrative around it and this sort of thing. That's what Gemini tends to do. Jupiter can be a little bit out of place in that, but in that first 10 degrees of Gemini, then Jupiter has what is called decanic dignity there. And so this is a place where there are lots of opportunities. I often think about this as like the jack of all trades and master of none aspect, right? So this is like a space where there is lots of information and lots of talent in lots of different areas. Sometimes this placement can run into a problem where it's like, oh, I've got so many different talents that like I don't know which one to do, and it can create a little bit of paralysis or something like this. But I maybe because I have this aspect, but I typically like this because it shows a lot of talent and opportunities coming from lots of different directions. And I think the multiplicity is likely to be helpful in a moment where we're increasingly feeling walled in by fewer and fewer good options. So this looks like a moment where we might be able to break it open a little bit. I don't know. What do you think?